Greetings. I'm Bart Massey, and I'm an associate professor of computer science at Portland State University in Portland, Oregon in the USA. And for many years now, I've been teaching Rust and helping other people teach Rust as an educator. And I'm really, really excited to talk to you about where I think we're going with this. I know we're short of time today. We're a little behind schedule. I'll try to catch us up a little bit by doing the quick version of this talk, but hopefully we'll be able to get some idea of where I think we're going a little bit with this. I'm also representing today Rust Edu, an organization I founded which tries to help people there again get Rust into universities and to help with Rust education in general. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So I want to talk about several things. First of all, I want to talk about where we are with teaching Rust in the universities a little bit. And then I want to talk about how people learn to be technologists, at least in my world, and how Rust is going to play an important part in that. And finally, I want to talk about the time and resources and community that we need to make this new thing that I'm going to talk about work. So that's the plan today. So let's start with the big picture. And I think the big picture is that right now we're making pretty good progress on helping people learn Rust to start. You know, starting Rust is much, much easier than it was when I started, and even much, much easier than it was a couple of years ago. I think we're ready to move on a little bit. We still need to keep working on that. I think it's important to do the introductory stuff, but where I want to see us go is to take on more advanced Rust in a specific context, and I think low level, and specifically embedded or bare metal Rust, is a good next place to develop materials and help universities and other educators teach some Rust stuff. I think there's another direction you can go, which is instead of going down the stack, you can go up. Instead of talking about low level and embedded, you can talk about high level and web stuff. And I think that's coming soon too. I've taught both of these things at Portland State a bunch, and I think they both have a lot of promise, but I think embedded's first, so that's what I think I'm going to talk about today. I should apologize, I don't know the Chinese education system well. If you're a Chinese university person who teaches Rust, please tell me after the talk. Please, I'd love to talk with you about what you're doing and whether what I'm about to say today makes sense to you. I do know a tiny bit, and I don't think I'm completely lost, but this is for you to tell me, I think. So please let me give an apology for that. One of those will work. So let's talk about where we are. I think we've made, like I say, made a lot of progress in the last few years, and I think that's really, really exciting. I think in the US, we had this thing where our president said, everybody should be using Rust. He didn't quite say it that way, but it was announced that memory-safe languages, which for low-level stuff means Rust, were the future, and universities notice that kind of thing. I think not just in our country, but around the world. Universities want to be doing things that are seen as important and next generation things to do, and I think that's good. I think there's a lot of folks using Rust in universities now, way more than there were just a few years ago. And so all of that's pretty exciting. And you know, one of the things that's most exciting to me is that there's a lot more introductory Rust materials available than there were just a couple of years ago. I would love to take credit for that, but I don't think I really can. But the TeachRS program that now the Trifecta Foundation runs has a whole bunch of really nice introductory Rust curriculum. Google's comprehensive Rust project has a ton of nice curriculum. There's some other curriculums out there too. That's not comprehensive. And so there's a lot of materials available online, and that's great. And one of the things we're doing is being good at hitting that middle ground between like university teaching and industrial training. That middle space is pretty well covered. And I think that's great. I think we're actually in surprisingly good shape. There's still things to do. I don't know of any university, maybe there is one, but I don't know of anybody who requires Rust of their computer science students as their first systems language. I think we'd like to see that, but I don't think it's there yet. And one of the things that makes universities get excited about teaching a language or using a language in their curriculum is that they see it as a way to train for jobs. And because the Rust job market is improving, but it's not improving dramatically or very, very fast, we kind of have to, it's going to be harder to push universities until that gets bigger. And the problem there, of course, is that it's not going to get bigger until industry sees that universities are graduating a lot of people. So that's something we have to continue to work on. But I want to change gears a little bit and embarrass myself. This is what my home office looks like right now, and I'm sorry, it's terrible. It's a mess of random technology and random things lying around. And why would I show you this? Why would I embarrass myself by showing you these pictures? Well, because every one of those represents something of the way I used to learn tech and something of the way that I continue to learn tech. Me and my friends and I, learned to tech long ago. I'm an old man. I know it's not obvious, but at 60, I learned my stuff in the microcomputer revolution in the 70s. And at that time, there was no internet to learn from, none whatsoever. It was hard to get books even, but we found some books. We found maybe some courses or materials around that we could get started with. And once we got the basic competency, a lot of our learning was by building stuff, right? By doing stuff. It's a learn by doing approach. And I think it's the most important way to learn the advanced material of anything, not just programming, but anything, is to learn it by doing it. And if we're going to learn advanced Rust by doing it, then that's I think part of why I'm so excited about embedded. It's really important to have mentors and guides handy. There's a list of people a mile long that helped me when I got stuck, pointed me at things that would be interesting and cool to do, right? And one of the things that my friends and I have all done is learn by teaching. Another great way to learn a topic is to teach that topic. And that works really well in the Rust ecosystem. We have really good mentorship and guidance, and we really have a lot of opportunities once we understand something to teach it to others. And, what kind of stuff am I talking about here? What did I learn when I was growing up? Well, I learned to build sort of normal software stuff, right? Like we all do. Learn some programming languages, learn to build do some kinds of systems and build them. Not interesting in an exciting way, but it's stuff that you learn and you figure out. Certainly algorithms and data structures were a big deal, and having a programming language that represents algorithms and data structures well was a big deal. But also not just software. If all you're learning is software by itself, you're missing out on all the interesting stuff, right? The stuff around it and the stuff that makes it happen. All my friends who program at very high level know some electronics, know some stuff about how firmware and very low-level software systems work. Those kinds of things are just invaluable when you're learning, it's in keeping you going and moving you beyond the basics. And so I think all of us know some sort of bare metal and OS kernel programming. We just heard from Josh, who absolutely worked inside the Linux kernel, but also worked inside the UEFI BIOS, and that sort of thing. Or maybe it was ACPI, I don't remember when. But anyway, somebody's BIOS. If Josh is here, he can fix me. But that was important. And so I'm going to claim that why we want to do embedded specifically with Rust is it ticks a lot of these boxes. It's a great next place for us to go. And in fact, Rust, right, is the most natural thing to do with Rust once you get beyond the basics, is to use it the way it sort of was designed to be used, which is as a systems language, right? As a replacement for C and C++ in places where it's more appropriate. And embedded is great for that. What are you doing when you're in a university? You've got science, technology, engineering, mathematics, the STEM disciplines beyond year 2, right? What do they look like? Well, what are people trying to do? They're in computer science and related disciplines, they're in engineering, they're in physics, in all these things. What you have, at least in the US system, and I think everywhere, are these junior and senior undergraduates and these master's students who are trying to get the skills they need to get a good job, right? To be someplace where they can actually work and that sort of thing. And not just the skills you need to get a job, but to get a good job, right, you need to be special. You need to be showing off more than just, what everybody else knows coming out of school. And I think this is a place where Rust helps, because Rust is a thing that not everybody coming out of school knows, and it could get you some opportunities you wouldn't have otherwise. But also, having low level and embedded helps, because this is the people who know both software and a little bit of hardware and a little bit of firmware are special people. And for them, finding jobs is much, much easier. And the students understand that, and they get excited about it. And of course, as you go beyond year 2, your coursework starts to be system stuff, which is operating systems, maybe Linux, maybe some web stuff. Oh, good places for Rust. But it's also, low-level stuff. And for that, embedded is a good place. And one of the things that does, remember the slide earlier? You remember what my desk looked like? Yeah, that's a whole bunch of projects, right? Projects are fantastic ways to learn advanced skills. And I think the embedded thing gives opportunities to do projects that you can really show off. And so when I'm building my embedded course, which I've taught a few times now and will be teaching again soon, I'm thinking about, sure, how do they learn some more Rust? How do they learn Rust to talk to hardware? But also, what are they going to come away with? What can they show off to their friends and family and future employers and say, look at this cool thing I built? And part of that is, the appeal of atoms, right? Of things, right? You can't get a piece of software out of your pocket and show it to somebody and say, look at this cool piece of software, right? It's boring and dumb, right? To show people software unless they're programmers. And even then, their eyes will glaze over after a couple of hundred lines. But you can show a thing you built. And you say, yeah, I made the software that makes this thing work. That's pretty cool. And for the students who are trying to impress an employer or explain to other people what they do, coming away with that means that you've got something super special. So we have a unique opportunity. We have a chance to, at the same time, provide the students with what they need, but also to really show off Rust at its best. There's some problems with my big plan. I want to be really clear about that, and I want to be honest about it. Time is the enemy. In the US, at least, courses tend to run 10 or 14 weeks. That's not very long to teach advanced Rust, to teach the embedded stuff, all the hardware and low-level stuff that you need. At the same time, you're teaching Rust to students who may not come in with any previous knowledge of Rust. They may have to learn basic Rust very, very fast to keep up in my course. So we really, really need to figure out how we can build a curriculum that tracks through that and makes it possible to do a lot in a little time. The thing about Rust is that Rust Embedded is that right now we're seeing just an explosion, a revolution in everything. Physics projects, mechanical engineering projects, electrical engineering projects, all, even in a whole range of disciplines, people are building things with little tiny microcontrollers in them and programming them, right? And they're typically programming them in C using something, or C++, using something like the Arduino environment or similar. And I would like to change that. I would like to see people thinking about this as, well, we built a little thing, we should program it in Rust. There's no reason we can't change that mindset, but we're going to have to build the tools and figure out what to do. I mean, Rust is so embedded ready. It's so straightforward to say, we have this language we built for you that, yeah, it's a little harder to learn. Maybe it's not harder to learn than C is, but if so, it's only a little harder to learn than C. Certainly not harder to learn than modern C++. And here's the benefits. We have a bunch of things. And so we have a good teaching story. We can tell people, look, when we're planning university curriculum or whatever, hey, look, this is a thing that's going to be across departments. It's going to be across things within our department that are worth teaching. I can't overemphasize, my course, my embedded course, I didn't get it out of the package because I forgot, but uses these little microcontroller boards that the BBC makes, the British Broadcasting Corporation, because of course they do, that are cheap and simple, but they give the students something they can show off their software on. And they can take it home, they can play with it, they can wave it around, and they can say, oh, I don't have to have a big fancy computer. I can just build stuff. The embedded community is awesome. They've been very, very welcoming to me and to other people. I would highly encourage you, if you're interested in doing embedded stuff, to check them out, because it's a very small community right now, but it's a very small community of really, really cool, helpful, friendly, welcoming people. Like Josh said earlier, I think the most important thing about Rust is the community, and I think we've got an amazing one. And it's a good time to start teaching Rust Embedded, because we're getting some really, really cool stuff happening in that space. I don't know how many of you have seen the Ferrocene effort to get a version of the Rust compiler, a pretty complete version of the Rust compiler, certified to the highest level of industrial standards for use in safety and mission critical systems. That's kind of cool, and that's brand new, and that's the kind of thing where we can jump on it as a Rust community and really start leveraging that kind of reputation that Rust is getting in the embedded space. We need stuff. I'm working right now as hard as I can on building course materials around embedded. I'm working with other people to help me build course materials around embedded. I'm working with some people to help me build some OS course materials and other low-level kinds of things. The Rust Embedded working group has been really, really supportive and helpful of getting those materials together. One of the problems with teaching embedded Rust is that people need hardware. The hardware is cheap. It's very, very cheap sometimes. $5 to $15 US will get you a lot of little computer right now. But we do need to figure out exactly how to make sure that everybody can get access to the hardware they need to play with embedded. We need to think about whether there's new funding models needed and that sort of thing. And what we need also is even more support from the Rust community. Embedded usability is hard. We don't have very good GUI tools. We don't have an Arduino for Rust right now, which would be really, really nice. Our documentation is a work in progress. We're doing as much documentation as we can, as fast as we can, to try to get stuff going, but there's a lot to do there. We need other Rust educators to jump in. I know of a couple or three different people around the world who are teaching embedded Rust stuff right now. The more that we have of those people, the easier it'll be for all of us if we cooperate. And I can't overstate how cool the Rust project and the Rust Foundation have been in making all this stuff go better and be smoother, but we need to rely on them even more going forward to help us out with that stuff. So I think where we are is a place where I'd like to see us go, is to keep pushing with our introductory Rust stuff, the work in progress, and to definitely think about in the near future what web Rust looks like as a thing to teach, or GUI systems and web systems. There's a lot of talk about systems like that here at GOSIM this year that looks like it's a year or so out. And so soon we'll want to start thinking about how to make that happen. And I've already made some preliminary plans around that. But I think the thing that's the future right now, the next big thing, is to go for the embedded space. I want to thank all the people who made this possible, GOSIM for the opportunity to speak, FutureWay, who's supported my work for a couple of years very generously, Portland State University, who's given me the opportunity to teach these Rust classes and do Rust work, the Rust Foundation, who's been very collaborative, and the Rust Embedded Working Group, and the many, many people in the Rust community and my friends and colleagues who've made this all work. So that's what I have as far as a talk. I guess we have, let's see, we're probably back on schedule, but if people had a couple quick questions, I'd be happy to talk with you about them now, or you can just meet me in the hall afterwards. I'm happy to chat anytime. Here's some links for the introductory Rust education stuff we're doing. That first link, rustedu.org, please join us there. Come jump on the RustEdu Zulip and say hi. I would love to have any of you who are interested in Rust education stuff there. Here's a couple places to look at stuff for embedded Rust stuff. The first link is the Rust Embedded Working Group link, and the second one is the bare metal course of Comprehensive Rust. We should have embedded Rust resources into TeachRS in the next few months. That's a project that's ongoing. Oh, sorry. This is an answer to a question that hasn't been asked. So yeah, thank you very much for listening.